Typically, when we hear about 3Ps, you think about public-private partnership. That's correct. Whatever we do as a government, we provide, financing tools. We provide, we come up with policies, procedures. We come up with programs. But at the same time, government doesn't, do affordable housing per se. It's partners like you who are partnered with us, who do affordable housing. So we value your partnership. Uh, Before I start on my slides, I want to recognize some people over here, and hopefully they will be, if they're not already here, they'll be trickling in. Mary Guys from Council Member Frietson's office is here. Mary, hi. I know Naeem will be joining us from the council staff. From the state, Brian O'Toole was supposed to come. Maybe he's still coming in. And then we have Kelly Slepin from NHT. They are one of our partners, and you will hear about our new financing tool, Opportunity Fund, where they are partnering with the county to come up with a financing tool. And then we have also invited folks from Council President Alvanaz's office, Vice President Glass's office, Reamer's office, Council Member Friedson's office, Council Member Javando's office. Hopefully they'll be trickling in. And then maybe a couple of folks from HUD will be here as well. Naeem is there. Naeem, you can raise your hand so people know you. And then, of course, we have folks from DSCA, folks from MC DOT, Department of Transportation, and DGS will be joining as well. And then we have invite people from nonprofit community, for-profit communities. Some of you are familiar with our staff, with our work, and some of you may be new. So this is a time to know each other. Folks, representing Montgomery Housing Alliance are here, and Purple Line Coalition, folks are here as well. And then I don't see anyone from the planning department yet. I know Lisa was supposed to come. Maybe she's still coming in. But anyway, as people trickle in, we'll give you ample opportunity to mingle with other folks whom you have not met yet. If you smell some oil or something, that's because I think few days ago, when they were putting oil in the oil tanks, some of the vapors escaped in the system. So I think it's much better now, what it was before. And AC was supposed to be working. I, felt AC or at least some air, but hopefully it will be coming back on. So we have the doors open. So hopefully it's not going to be too warm. But we'll try to keep this conversation, as interesting as possible. So you see this sign over here, 3 Ps. Production, preservation, and protection. By production, we mean, and all this in your slides, so don't have to take notes or anything. We mean, providing housing to those folks who are at or below 50% of AMI. In the county, we have 20,000 households who are rent burdened, which means that they are paying more than 30% of their gross income towards the rent. Then we have another 20,000 households who are severely rent burdened. By that I mean they are paying more than 50% of their income towards the rent. So we need to produce more. Then we need to preserve what we already have as affordable housing, preserve naturally occurring affordable housing, make sure that our housing stays in good condition, because we want to provide decent, safe, affordable housing to the county residents. And then protection. We want to make sure that those people who are most at risk get help. Those people who are severely rent burdened, those 20,000 households who are severely rent burdened, get help. And then our clock doesn't stop here. If you look at the COG goals, and one thing I would say, when I'm presenting my slides, I try to summarize the slides. I don't go by page by page or by slides. Those slides are for you to keep. I provide anecdotal information as we go along. So if you look at the COG goals, Montgomery County is supposed to create additional 40,000 housing units between now, which is almost half of 2022 now, and through 2030. And guess what? Half of those 40,000 units have to be at or below 50% of AMI. So do the math. We have 20,000 households who are severely rent burden already pre-pandemic. Now we need to create additional 20,000, units at or below 50% of AMIs. And then we don't have to lose whatever we have. Because according to the consultants, who did the study for the planning department, we have 25,000 naturally occurring affordable housing units in the county, of which 11,000 units are at risk to be lost by 2030. We have said this, county executive has said this, on different occasions. So this is what we are dealing with in the county. So which also means that we as a group need to come up with no net loss approach for any redevelopment to make sure that whatever we have, we don't lose that. Then only we can make a difference in terms of the end goal here. I don't know what slide we are. Can we move to? I think we have gone. Just quickly, on the objectives, we'll have a full load for this workshop. We'll go through some case studies. These are real life case studies, actual projects which have closed. And we'll have developers come up here, make the presentation, tell you what the pitfalls are, do's and don'ts, what the process was about. We'll go through our challenges, our strategies. We'll go through our funding sources, our financing tools, our new fund, Naturally Occurring Affordable Housing Fund, that was approved by the council for our FY23 budget. So next slide, please. I think I've gone through this slide already. Now the next slide shows what we have done in FY22. So although we are in the recovery mode, or you can say we are maybe still in the response mode, but whatever the new normal may be at this point, we have been making progress, and it's a collective effort. So with your efforts and with our efforts, we are making great strides in terms of doing affordable housing. In FY22 alone, we have committed our monies to 20 projects. 10 have closed, and 10 are pending. By pending, they are going to close too. They may not close exactly by June 30th, but they will close. At least that's what our expectation is. So within these 20 projects, we are talking about 1,400 some units. Whether they're half of them, the math works out beautifully here. Half of them are production, half of them are preservation. And we have committed $94 million to these 20 projects, which amounts to $65,000 per unit in subsidy. If you look at our 10-year record, and this question has come up from different developers from time to time. If you look at our 10-year averages, our per unit subsidy has been around 50 to 55,000. Some are high, some are low. It averages out to 50 to 55,000 per unit subsidy. For 2022, it's about 65,000 per unit subsidy. And we have had projects with 12 different partners, besides several of you who have been working with us for a very long period of time. We have also been attracting new partners in the mix here. We did do one project. It was the adaptive reuse of a property on Route 108 Sandy Spring. It was a 3-story commercial building converted into senior housing, affordable senior housing. This is a developer out of Wisconsin who approached us. And then later on, you will hear when we talk about the county-owned land and PLD-owned land, we have received several letters of interest, multiple letters of interest on several of these lots. And several of these developers have been outside of DMV area. So the word is getting out. We have the money. I may sound like RB's commercial. We have the meat. So, but we have the money. But just don't ask me, show me the money. Our risk management folks won't let us show $100 bills sitting in trunk load. We have $100 million in capital. You will see it shortly for capital loans. We are very fortunate in the county that with the county executive recommending $140 million for FY23 budget for housing support, preservation, and new construction. And then thanks to the council for approving our budget, we have $100 million to make capital loans in FY23. Just going back to FY22 for a second, we have also been using home and CDBG money preserving or constructed 269 units. 3 projects have been senior projects, and 5 have been special needs projects as well. Now, one thing which this slide doesn't show, but I've said this during the Fed committee presentation, we have also partnered with the faith-based community. So about a couple of months ago, we did go to a grand opening, as a project up county, developed by St. Anne and Mission First. And I'm sure Mission First, someone is here from Mission First to make the presentation. So we are looking at, where to put affordable housing, how to find new opportunities. We had a town hall meeting with the faith-based community. And if you look at our faith-based community, they're sitting on a land which is either not utilized at all or grossly underutilized. So we see opportunities to partner with faith-based community. And I've said this, in different forums, development is not easy. So please don't get me wrong. It's not that you just flip a switch and development happens. It is cumbersome, time-consuming, takes money, but when you come out the other side of the tunnel, it's nice and sunny in terms of affordable housing. So if you've been following, some articles, I was reading an article a few days ago, and the article said, in the United States, given what is happening in the economy right now, it's conceivable that, a couple of hundreds of religious institutions may just close. So we see an opportunity to work with the religious institutions. So we know that, a lot of times people don't have all the skill set. We want people to partner, with other developers who have the skill set to get the development going. But we see opportunities there. Next slide, please. Okay. So for the approved budget, this is, we have simplified the slide. If you have been following us from our Fed committee slide, this is a simplified version of this. We have Housing Initiative Fund. So in other jurisdictions, you have Housing Trust Fund. We call it Housing Initiative Fund in the county. So it gets funded by operating dollars and also by CIP dollars. So between operating and CIP dollars, we have about $51.7 million for FY23. Then we have, as you heard, naturally occurring affordable housing fund for $40 million to preserve, as I mentioned, what we already have as affordable housing. We see a lot of opportunities across the county along the transit corridors with Purple Line or other transit corridors, a bus rapid system, corridors. We see a lot of opportunities, but we're not just limited to $40 million. So if you are thinking, my gosh, what if you just spend $40 million? We have other $60 million. But at the same time, $40 million, is spoken for naturally occurring affordable housing. And if you have a project, you want to come and talk to us, if we can't find the money, right now, we will work with the council, with Fed committee, with OMB to find the money. So, and then we have some CDBG and home money. Altogether, between home and CDBG on an annual basis, we get about some $7 million. So between the two of those federal funds, of course, you have to comply with the federal regulations, Davis-Bacon rules, but we, put out $4.5 million on an average in any given year. So altogether, it adds up to about $96 million. Then we also, through our FY23 budget, we added $6 million to our opportunity fund. You will hear about that fund, shortly as we move through the slides. It's a one-stop shop for acquisition financing, short-term financing for 3 years. The documents, you have uniform set of documents with the CDFI, National Housing Trust, and they can give you more details. So altogether in that fund, we'll have $20 million. $14 million have been appropriated from FY20 and 21 funds, and then we added another $6 million from FY23 funds. So altogether, it adds up to $102 million. Next slide, please. So let's talk about the $40 million naturally occurring affordable housing fund. So we saw a lot of opportunities, especially now, if you see interest rates are on the rise, they will rise by another 75 basis points when the Fed meets next. There's a lot of pressure in terms of acquisitions. So, and if you look at just the purple line, there are about 12,000 units which are at risk, which are naturally occurring affordable housing. Well, actually 18,000. 12,000 is towards Prince George's County, 6,000 or 6,500 towards Montgomery County side. We see a lot of opportunity along the purple line. We see opportunities in other parts of the county. So the county executive, and thanks to the county executive for recommending $40 million. I know several of you supported us, so thank you very much for supporting us, through the budget process, whether it's the Opportunity Fund or it's a NOAA fund, there's a new fund. So we see a lot of opportunity, not only for us as a county, but for our developers. So as you're looking at your transactions, we are looking at transactions where at least 50% of the units are at or below 70% of AMI. AMI has gone up, yes, from 129 to 142 and change at this point has gone up by 10.3%. So, but there are opportunities at this point, in the county, and some of you may be bidding on several of those projects as well. And then, of course, with the NOAA fund or this other $60 million that we have, we follow the same HIF guidelines and the process. And Frank Demarais, Deputy Director of my department, will go over some of those, nuances. We have been seeing, market pressures. If you look at the acquisition transaction that we see, on an average, we see about 55 of acquisition transactions on an annual basis. And if you look at your slide, between 2020, of course, that was the time when we were in the middle of the pandemic, at the height of the pandemic, we saw $1.4 billion with a B worth of transaction. In 2021, when the vaccines became available and, whatever the new normal has been, people were adjusting to the new normal, it rose to 3.5 billion. On a per unit cost, it jumped from 218,000 to 284,000. That's $70,000 per unit jump. It's a big jump. And, I have seen certain ads, marketed by the broker dealers, if you have in this property, the market rent could go up by 10% or 15%. I'm sure when the county executive comes here, he'll talk about the pressures on the rent increases. Until May 15th, we had a cap on any rent increase, which was limited to 0.4%. But as of May 16th, there's no cap per se. So we have seen notices going out to the tenants, 90-day notices, anywhere from 6-7% to 25%, 30% rent increase. We have folks here from our Office of Landlord Tenant Affairs. They will tell you we have received at least 28 complaints from different tenants who have seen their rents go up in double digits. On an average, it's like 19% increase. So the rent pressure is there and will continue to be there. Even if we think that as interest rates increase, our acquisition market will slow down, that remains to be seen. But until that really happens, we see an uptick. We don't have 2020 data yet, but we see an uptick in the acquisition process, in the acquisition cost. So whatever we can do as government or you as a developer, affordable housing developer whose mission is to do affordable housing, we need to come together as a team to solve this affordable housing situation here. And of course, we need to make sure that we have dedicated funding, which we have at this point, whether it's federal funds, local funds, you all bring in philanthropic equity to the table, or the state. I saw Brian joining us. The state has money. The state has been helping us with some of our projects, which has seen the uptick in the construction cost. And I know some of you are dealing with that construction cost increases. That's across the board. So if this is a new normal, at some point, maybe there'll the craziness will come down in the marketplace. If the price of lumber, if it shot up to $1,500, per 1,000 board of wood or something, it may have come down. But, the tariffs on Canadian lumber, they are not going away anytime soon. So the craziness may still be there, even if the interest rates rise by another 75 basis points by the end of this year, and the inflation rises from 8.6 to almost 9%. Ultimately, it may come down, but may take some time for the inflation to come down. So we are in this for the long haul, and we need all the brain power, all thinking outside the box in making the equation work. So that's where we really appreciate your effort. We cannot do just by ourselves. We always look at you as a community to help us, to tell us, what may work, what may not work. And sometimes, from time to time, we bounce off ideas with you, and you gave us great input. So thank you very much for providing the input to us. Our next slide will take you to Affordable Housing Opportunity Fund. At this point, I will ask Frank and Kelly to come up and tell you about the fund, and they will continue with the rest of the presentation.
All right, good morning, and I'll add my thanks. Again, Frank Desmarais. I work with our multifamily team. Representatives are here. I want to thank you on behalf of all the teams for working with us, keeping communication open. What we're going to talk about is how to maintain that, in this context of where we are in 23. The Affordable Housing Opportunity Fund was funded and went through an RFP process to focus on bringing additional creative capital to the acquisition process. It's a model that's been used in a number of jurisdictions, and going through a process after we got the funding last year. National Housing Trust was selected as the fund manager in March, and the program became active at the end of March. This is different than our other HIF financing approach, which is we ask anyone with interest in this capacity to be working through NHT. We will be at the process, at the table. The county will lend its money at the acquisition, but we're focused on how to creatively combine the money that we've committed, and the target is 3-year acquisition financing. We focus on long-term affordability as the takeout, but creative approaches to that are what are being solicited and welcomed. The focus is on our at-risk properties. We know that the NOAA fund long-term financing is a dedicated minimum amount toward that, but we recognize that with the number we saw there, $3.5 billion in real estate, multifamily real estate transacted last calendar year. There are opportunities out there that we're hoping this additional resource can advantage, mission-focused, affordable-focused, timely, cost-competitive, and creative. So I'm going to introduce Callie Slepian, who's going to highlight how to work with NHT.
Thanks, Frank. Good morning, everyone. My name is Callie Slepian, and I'm the Lending Initiatives Manager at National Housing Trust. A big thank you to the county for having me here this morning to excite everyone about the AHOF Fund. I'm going to quickly introduce NHT, talk about our approach to lending, and then go into more about the fund. For those of you who don't know us, National Housing Trust is an affordable housing nonprofit based in DC. We use the tools of lending, real estate development, energy efficiency, policy advocacy, and community engagement to work towards a future where low-income families in every community have access to safe, healthy, and affordable housing. Founded in 1986, we've engaged in policy work in all 50 states, own over 4,200 units of housing, and have financed $1 billion in real estate. On the lending side, we've deployed over $90 million, leveraging over $2 billion in public and private financing to enable the creation of over 20,000 affordable units for low-income households. We do this through 2 sister CDFIs, NHT Community Development Fund and the Institute for Community Economics. We primarily work through NHT CDF, and they are who we're going to do AHOF lending through. NHT CDF was founded on the premise that early stage loans for affordable housing are high impact and less risky than typically talked about, especially when done in partnership with the borrower. In fact, NHT CDF has never suffered a loss on an unsecured loan. Our history and success with early stage and unsecured lending allows us to consider risk differently when underwriting a loan, particularly projects with limited liquidity or smaller balance sheets. Locally in the DMV, NHT CDF is a full-service lender, offering an array of loan products to support local production and preservation of affordable housing. In the last 5 years, we've supported 3,400 units of housing through 40 loans and deploying $32 million of capital in the DMV. We also lend nationally, where we prioritize what we call but-for lending, meaning focusing our lending where our capital is really necessary to move a project forward. In particular, we do a lot of early-stage unsecured lending and are the leading community land trust lender. We are very excited to be partnering with Montgomery County on the Affordable Housing Opportunity Fund. Through this fund, we are partnering with the county to provide early-stage lending to get projects off the ground. In particular, AHOF will prioritize projects that address the risk of loss of naturally occurring affordable housing or the expansion of available affordable housing. Priority factors include proximity to transit, affordability of current rents compared to the market, density opportunities, and potential for financing that get to those hard-to-reach AMIs. We're on the right side. Through this partnership, NHT CDF is able to leverage the county's $20 million with our capital and our relationships to bring $80 million of financing. For the larger loans, we will bring in partner CDFIs to support higher acquisition prices. Part of this leverage comes from several local initiatives that we work on. First is along the Purple Line. We are part of a JP Morgan-funded collective through a pro-neighborhoods initiative. Since starting 2 years ago, we've grown this investment 5 times and have raised capital from Kaiser Permanente and the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. We're also an active member of the Purple Line Corridor Coalition and are excited to bring those key stakeholders to this work. Our second initiative is the deployment of our 2018 and 2020 Capital Magnet Fund Awards. These are dedicated funds to support our early stage project lending, and Maryland is one of our target geographies. Both of these initiatives use lower cost capital, and AHOF projects that are applicable for either of them will get to lower rates. We also have late breaking news, which is yesterday we found out we got a $6 million award from Capital Magnet Fund to support our community land trust lending. We have yet to figure out what geographies that was awarded to, but we're really hoping that Maryland is one of them and can bring community land trust into this work as well. So, how are we getting this funding to your projects? The fund is designed to be a fast-acting source of capital that can move quickly to respond to opportunities and enable us to be partners in securing affordable housing and taking it off the market. Our timing allows us to commit to funding within 30 days of application and close within 60 days. Step 1 is initial screening with our team, where we'll talk about the project, our terms, and see if AHOF is a good fit, and then we'll loop in the county to see if they agree. Step 2 is a formal application, where we will collect borrower and project level information, and this application goes to NHT and the county, where then in step 3, we underwrite, we seek loan approval and coordinate with the county to get to closing. We then aim to do a 30-day time frame to get to closing. Although there are technically 2 loans, one from NHT CDF and a subordinate loan from the county, there will only be one set of closing documents to negotiate through. The general loan terms are in the handout you got at the door and on the screen, so I'm going to go through them really quickly. But loans could be $1 to $30 million. The term is up to 3 years. It's for pre-development acquisition and bridge financing, which includes critical repairs. At least 50% of units need to be at or below 70% AMI. Rates are currently capped at 4.95% and will be lower if the Purple Line or CMF focused. And loan to value can go up to 105% for acquisition loans. NHT CDF prides ourselves on working closely with our borrowers and to provide the flexibility needed to make projects happen. We're all here because we want to see more affordable housing in Montgomery County, and we're worried about what will happen if there isn't more. If you have a deal that doesn't quite fit the terms that you saw, please contact us and we can talk through different options. We're honored to be working with the county to manage this fund and look forward to hearing from all of you about your projects. Handing it back over to Asim.
So at this point, we'll take a pause from this presentation county executive is here, and Mark's on a tight schedule, so we'll invite Mark to say a few remarks, and then I think he has a PowerPoint presentation to go through. So we'll switch our slides. Mark, could you please come?
So, thank you all for being here today. And I wanted to just take a few minutes to get everybody to look at the landscape of affordable housing in Montgomery County, because it's actually far worse than anybody thinks. And we've been pretty much unwilling to talk about what's happening here, but I think we're really in serious trouble. I have no clue, we've let it go so far, how we're going to be able to retain a workforce in this area in the long term unless we are willing to do some things that are a bit more drastic than what we've done so far. And I looked at, the regional hand report, and the report was not good news, because basically nobody is building affordable housing for the people who need it. Not like housing's not being built, but housing for the people who need the housing the most, it's not happening. So Hand's conclusion was housing being built, not what we need. And that's a problem, because everybody signed on to these obligations or promises, and they're not doing what they need to do to achieve them. And I don't know how one deals with the problem without first analyzing it and then making decisions that you actually have to have solutions that address the problem. And I was on the council for 12 years. It was alarming to look at our data on MPDUs, where this is Montgomery County. Hold our hands up, pat ourselves on the back, and say we've got a world-leading inclusionary housing program in the MPDU program, and we've got 6,700 units remaining from a 30-year program. I'm yawning. Seriously. 1.1 million people in this county. Masses of people living in poverty and unaffordable housing, and we pretend like we're national leaders with 6,700 units. So I don't have an easy solution, but I wanted to just show people what the landscape of the county looks like, so as we start thinking about what we do, people start thinking about how to address it. So I'm going to go up here because I can't see it with this microphone where it is. This could be really, yeah. If I could clip this to my arm, or my finger, yeah, this will work. So, so I tried to, look at the landscape of today's multifamily units, and and who's living in them. So these are the incomes of people in the county, and these are the number of households that are in those income brackets. And this one is low because I just lumped things over 80, but I didn't get into all the other groups. Obviously, there's a boatload of people in Montgomery County making more than 80% of AMI. So you look at, the totals, about 30,000 people who are, or 31,000 who are in this group earning less than 30% of AMI, 18,700 earning 31 to 50, and about almost 15,000 at under 65% down to 51. And then this is the folks in the 60, 60, 80 AMI group, which are the folks who largely can get eligible for MPDUs. And then there are these folks over 80% of AMI. And this was the number cost burdened. And these are the numbers of severely cost burdened. So severely cost burdened are the people up around 50 or so percent, but it's really spending 50% of their income on housing or more. So when you add those up, you wind up with about almost 30,000 households. Nobody builds housing for them. Nobody. They're not served by my MPDU program. Occasionally we scratch out a couple of extra units. I've seen projects for somebody with 60% or 40%, but it's not the norm. The norm, remember, this was a program set up for teachers and firefighters, not for these people. How this county has gone as long as we have and pretended like this isn't a problem is a problem. So that's today. Then there's this projection about 40,000 households arriving by 2030. And from their projection, about 50% of them would be under $50,000 or under 50% of AMI. About a quarter of them would be in this kind of moderate range, and this is, most of this group could be served by MPDUs. These are people over 75%. This is the market. And so you need housing, supported housing that serves 30,000 of 40,000 people. I would have to get 3 affordable units out of every 4 units that are built. And that's just to deal with the growth in the county. And it still leaves these people out in the cold. There is no plan to deal with this, and my criticism of the folks who put together the UI report and the rest of that, and I don't know if any of you are in the room right now, so I don't want to upset you, but the fact is, the report completely ignored who lived in Montgomery County. It only talked about who was coming to Montgomery County and what we needed to do for them, and just, I guess, assumed that these people just live in the shadows and it doesn't really matter. But to me, it matters, because if I build 10,000 market units, who wants to tell me how many MPDUs I get? It's a really easy math question. I get between 12.5% and 15% MPDUs. I get between 1,250 and 1,500 MPDUs. That number is nowhere close to this. There's no bearing on reality. So if people really believe this, and they believe the projections that got them to this, then it would be nice to have a solution proposed for this. Because to me, that's a major problem. That's just going to add to the problems we're already dealing with in the county. And then you get Parking Planning's other projection. They were looking at naturally occurring affordable units in the county, and they said in 2000, we had about 44,000 units. Like, there's one of those graphs where you can't tell it's between 2 numbers, and you can't tell if it's 43 or 44, but I'll use 44 just to be reasonable. And that today, we're somewhere down around 22 or 23,000. So we've lost half of what we had in 2000. And they said we will lose, by 2030, another 7,000 to 11,000 units. So add these people that you lose to this mess over here, and this is the real Montgomery County. And what I want people to deal with is reality, because we need to start doing programs that are based on reality, not based on a happy story, which is not going to happen. So next slide. So this is kind of my summary. I've got 40,000 currently cost burden, 29,000 are severe. I need 30,000 new households, and I'm going to lose 11,000. That's the takeaway from all that other stuff. And the next one. And this is our requirements, just to restate it, where we'll wind up with producing affordable housing. That's the 1,500 units. That's just a summary of what I've just gone over. And the next one. So what is being built as of January 2021? So we got a list of all the projects that were being built. And these were redevelopments and new projects. These are with signed agreements. We have signed agreements for 32,000. Now this is a year and a half old, and I think this is actually, the total number of units is actually more than this by maybe 6,000 or 8,000 units. But that's what we had at the beginning of 2021, and that's the number of MPDUs we're going to get. Nowhere near addressing anything. And that's the number of workforce units we're going to get. Equally fairly pathetic number. So that's 16% of what we're scheduled to produce in a county out of our signed agreements. I find it distressing in terms of what the implications are for everybody here. And that's why I wanted to call it out. These are the units, this is roughly the projection number of units that are needed by 2030. It kind of tells you what will happen under those formulas. So what else do we have? Next slide. So this is my poster child for the insanity of our current property policies. This is Battery Lane. This unit has 87 NOAAs in it today. It is the new units, the developer's getting 399 units. So the county very generously upzoned the property, created massive new capacity to build, and I will get 60 MPDUs from this project. Anybody think this is embarrassing? Is this anybody's idea of a housing policy? This is Montgomery County's housing policy. Down the street, or up the street, I forget which direction it is from this project, they're doing a cluster of buildings. There are 477 units in the building. They're mostly NOAA. They're 1 to 3 bedrooms. And the 3 bedrooms are up around 3,000, but the NOAA units for 1 bedrooms in the $1,600 range and 2 bedrooms in the $1,800 range. And after they go from 470 units to 1,130 units, we will get between 170 and 226 units. That's it. This is what the proponents of county policy and parking planning claim to be our affordable housing strategy. Next slide. So these are some things I've thought of. I know that this will be poison to some people, but just want to, what I want to leave you with is, if you don't like this, then you tell me what you would do to solve the problem. Because people can't forever just say, we don't like these solutions, we don't like these solutions, and never have to come to the table and say, but I have a better solution. If somebody can think of a better solution, I'm open to it. But the first thing I'd think about doing is stabilizing units produced before 2005. Why? Because those units, all the MPDUs that were built will have expired by 2025, except for ones where the previous county executive got some extensions on them, but they're not lifetime extensions. They're relatively short-term extensions. So this would stabilize the older communities. It would prevent displacement. It would help prevent displacement if it's tied to some other things. I would not put it on new construction because we already require, for everything after 2005, they already have long-term MPDU requirements. And I will be proposing even more long-term MPDU requirements. And so you could argue maybe enough is enough on the stuff that has requirements. But these units are the ones that are most at risk. And we've done a map, and I should have included that here. We have hot zones all around the county of low-income, high-minority neighborhoods that are very densely packed, close to transit, close to major areas in the county, like off the Twin Brook Parkway, that are all candidates for displacement. The second thing, I'd require a much higher percentage of affordable housing units. I would probably think about 1/3 of a building or of a set of complexes. I would talk about this as our housing policies have to create complete communities. You hear people talk about complete streets. They want to see a bike lane, they want to see a bus lane, and they want to have roads, and they want green spaces, but we never talk about complete communities. So we let people go into a place like Bethesda and produce virtually nothing but luxury housing, and 12.5% or 15% of something that's affordable. Nobody ever says that when we're redeveloping an area, we ought to redevelop it for everybody who needs to live there, not just some of the people who live there. And so this is an opportunity with the new construction to take advantage of the increased density to bring in a better mix of housing. Third, we need to develop our own properties as soon as possible. So we've put 18 and 19 properties up right now. Some of you are soliciting or have responded to our solicitation. I know that I think they said they got 130 proposals. So I'm looking forward to being able to deal with those proposals. And I'm trying to figure out a way not to do it the way we normally would, which that could take us God knows how many years. We need to figure out how we can process people's interest pretty quickly and move these things to actually being built. But even this, it only put a tiny dent in the universe. If I got 200 units for each one of the 18, and I won't because some of them are small, that'd only get you 3,600 units toward the bigger problem, but it's better than nothing. I'd encourage ownership. And this is another thing where we need a change in our mentality. If I produce 30,000 rental units as affordable housing, if we could even do that, but I do it as rental, these people build no wealth. And I know the nonprofits have been deeply engaged in production of rental housing, but at some point, if we really want to help people, we've got to take them out of dependency and be willing to create independence. And we've got to help tenants go through a transition period. I know the experiences. Montgomery County had a horrible experience over on East-West Highway, and we have never lived that bad experience down. The tenants didn't put enough money, well, the tenants, their consultants, didn't tell them to put enough money away in reserves. They were not able to maintain the building. The tenants weren't properly trained. They had boards that didn't carry out their fiduciary responsibilities, and that co-op collapsed. And the county has used that collapse of a co-op, which I think is 30 years ago, as an excuse never to do these again. And we need to rethink that, and we need our nonprofits to rethink that. I don't expect you to buy a building and hand it over to tenants tomorrow and say, own this and operate it, but I do think people need to think about a 3 to 5 year transition where you clean up people's credit. We can help them get job training so they can upskill themselves and get better paying jobs. You train people about the responsibilities of managing a building, and then you help people go into ownership opportunities. Because if I don't do that, if we don't do that collectively, then we can say we provided shelter, but we pretty much guarantee that they don't build any wealth. They will not do what I was able to do and other people were able to do, which is, take equity out of your house and help a kid go to college or do any of the other things that you might want to do. We need a no net loss policy. You can't have what's happened in Bethesda happen anymore. You have to start by saying that if you're going to take down a set of units and they're NOAAs, that your starting point is all the NOAAs come back and then you add some additional units for growth. Because if I only preserve what's here, I don't deal with who's coming here. So I need a strategy that addresses dealing both people who are here and people who are coming here. And the NOAA thing is really important. My staff negotiated on Twin Brook Parkway with Halpine, and when we started negotiating, we owned a tiny sliver of land, and the council wanted us to give it away, and we said no, because we owned it. And we negotiated with the developer because we knew, as unusable as it was, he would take the density off that property and then spread it over the rest of his project. And so the things we got out of it I thought were important were affordability down to 30% of AMI for a set of the units. And most importantly, we got the right of return, which is different than the right to apply. The tenants were given the right to apply, which is kind of meaningless because you apply, and then if you're uncreditworthy, you're rejected, and if your income's too low, you're rejected. This landlord agreed to let people come back as long as they were in good standing with the landlord. So if they're paying their rent, even if they were spending 50 or 60% of their income to pay their rent, they would be able to get units in the new development there. And that was important, and that's something I think we need to generalize around the county. We cannot afford to have somebody walk into an affordable neighborhood and obliterate it and then say, good luck. And when I was on the council, the planning board had proposed rezoning Long Branch. I don't know how many of you know where Long Branch is. And they basically asked the developers, how much density do we have to get you to tear these buildings down? And then they said, but we'll get 15% MPDUs back. Even if you got enough density, so 15% MPDUs actually came back, what nobody apparently realized who did this was the residents in that community are below anything that would get them into an MPDU. Conveniently forgotten by the planners of Montgomery County and pretty much ignored by everybody else. So I said a terrible thing. I think I called it ethnic cleansing, and they withdrew their proposal. I'm not ashamed of what I said, because that's damn well what would have happened to that community if what they had planned had gone through. And we can't do stuff. There's got to be some higher level of consciousness into the policies we make. And then we need to look at new ways of building stuff. And, I know I cannot get blood from a stone. And that if I ask a developer to build a high-rise and it costs $500 a square foot to build a high-rise, it's hard to ask for a whole lot. I will say there are multiple ways to achieve density, and density isn't always achieved by height. And if you think about Bethesda, there was a fixed demand for units that they were working with. You could build them in a few buildings that are 20 or 30 stories tall, or you could have rezoned for like 7-story buildings, which could have been built in stick and could have been built at lower prices, where over Bethesda you would have gotten the same yield of units. So if your fixation is density, you could have achieved the density, but you could have achieved it with more buildings that would have cost less per square foot to build, which means it would have been easier for the developer to contribute more units, but also would have been easier for the county to buy down units and make those units expensible. Buying down a unit that costs $250 a square foot to build is a world difference than trying to buy down a unit that costs $500 a square foot to build. So when people talk about density, I have an allergy to height, but I don't have an allergy to density. The height is a killer because the developers just tell you, look what it costs to build this building, we can't possibly fit this in. The other thing we have to stop is, and this is going on in Bethesda too, where we gave an escape hatch from providing MPDUs if the condo fees were too high. So the developers offer us obligatory, our MPDU units, and they say, oh, so sad, the tenants can't live here because the condo fees are over $1,000 a month and they can't pay it. And then they offer us, what was it, $133,000 a unit to buy their way out of providing affordable units. So I told my people no more of that. And we actually are getting a better deal. That'll be announced sometime soon? Sometime soon. And when it gets announced, you'll see a way that we've looked at going forward in terms of adjusting prices and condo fees. But it's important for us to find other ways to build. We have talked with people doing container housing. We've talked to people doing modular housing. We've got to figure out how we can build things that don't cost a fortune to build. We've got to figure out how to not get ourselves in a box of trying to do everything with high rises and do it with lower height buildings where the affordability issue is easier to tackle. So I kind of wanted to leave you with this because if we're talking about affordable housing, I want everybody to have in their mind, what exactly are we talking about? And who exactly are we serving? There is one statistic I didn't get put up there, and if I'd found the chart, I would have had it there. But it's a chart also done by Park and Planning. I like using other people's stuff because that way I'm not blamed for it. And their chart showed who lives where in Montgomery County. And there was a deficit, I want to say it's like 24,000 units. If people had $30,000 of income, there was a deficit of about 24,000 units. There's a deficit in units going up to 50,000. I got that. But in the MPDU price range, there are actually more MPDU priced units than there are people with MPDU incomes. Think about that. More people, more units than there are people. Now, that's not surprising because the people at 30% of AMI and 50% of AMI are the ones renting those next most affordable units that are priced for people with, say, $70,000 incomes, and they're living in there and they're spending, 60% of their income on it. But that's the reality of Montgomery County, which makes you wonder, is our biggest challenge producing MPDUs, or should we be focusing our requirements on building below MPDUs and getting people who are paying too much money, who are living in MPDUs, get them out of those units into new affordable units that they can afford, and magically freeing up these higher priced units, which may be more efficient than doing it the way we're doing it now, which is taking density, getting 15% of a very dense, expensive property and getting 15% MPDUs, which is still too much for the people we're really trying to serve or who have the greatest trouble finding housing. I do not have answers to all of this, which is why we need other brains to think about this and actually think about how do you get to a solution. But I wanted people to see this because I've been in this debate for a while, and it's getting increasingly frustrating because I feel like, Rome is burning and we're fiddling around the edges. And something's got to change. Or we can just stop talking about affordable housing and say it is what it is, the market does what it does, we're all innocent, it's not our fault. We can all do that, but then we shouldn't have affordable housing discussions. So if you can have affordable housing discussions, let's think about how we deal with this. So thank you for enduring me this morning. I know it's a little bit depressing, but I feel like it's a reality I've been dealing with and thinking about for years. And I just don't think we can go on the way we're going on right now. And hopefully other people in this room agree and want to help find solutions to this. So thank you all very much.
We got it.
All right, we'll just pick up.
So thank you, Mark, for those comments. I know that you have to go, to DC for another meeting, but what you saw from Mark's slides, those numbers validate what we have been talking about, all this morning. We threw out a bunch of numbers, but those numbers are real numbers. Those numbers do make sense. So collectively, we as a group, as affordable housing practitioners, to think about where do we go, how do we solve for this, issue over here. It's a policy issue. And of course, we have funding, but we can certainly use more funding, that's true, but I'm seeing the glass is half full. So whatever we have, let's appreciate what we have. Let's not, complain too much about what we do not have. But at the same time, what we have is, let's use that, what we have, in a way that we can leverage those dollars to the maximum extent. Mark talked about Alpine project. So we were able to negotiate county land, piece of land, to get 6 units at 30% of AMI, 6 units at 40% of AMI, 6 units at 50% of AMI, besides preserving about 500 some units on the property in case of redevelopment. So that goes to no net loss. Start thinking about how we can bring down the construction cost. Yes, the facts in front of us, the construction cost is going up. How else we can build to bring the construction cost down? So there, we may not find solutions in the next half an hour or so, but we as a community need to start thinking about these aspects of this issue. So we'll continue with our discussion. Next, we'll talk about the pilots. So Frank will talk about the pilots and our process. Then we'll go into county owned land sites, and then we'll go into a presentation from the two developers.
As we were just talking, this is all financing contingent. Everything we need to pay for, we need to support. The highlight here is that those who've been active in the county familiar that in almost all of our affordable developments, DHCA, the county with our finance department, would allocate payment in lieu of taxes, pilot awards at a per unit basis as part of the financing package. Recently, the council passed a by right approach to the pilot. So if a property meets the conditions, and the property and the development partner have to meet the state eligibility, the county's only authorized to offer real estate on county real estate taxes if you meet state requirements. But if the property is owned, controlled by a nonprofit, if at least half of the units are at or below 60% AMI for a minimum 15-year regulatory agreement, the county's real estate taxes on that property are abated for the duration of the regulatory agreement. So this is something that is, on all the units in the building. You may have, 60, 80% of the units we value mixed income properties. Previously, we would only be able to do it on the restricted units. This applies to all of the real estate taxes on that property. There are properties which will not qualify for this eligibility. We still have in DHCA, as part of our working with you on your properties, if it's not eligible for this pilot, the negotiated pilot. Per unit, there's a dollar amount that's set every year in our law. It's based on the homeowner average real estate tax credit as calculated by the state for the prior year. But it's a dollar amount, recently at $14.47, and we work with you on applying that pilot. So this is not incidental change. Wanted to bring it to your attention. We're happy to talk further to have you better understand it. Just for the next one. And so this just goes back to our fundamentals. You've been hearing about it, but what I want to call attention to is we do have our Housing Initiative Fund guidelines at our website. Takes you through all of the process, all of how we define our targets and priorities. But our focus in each transaction is to look for AMI distribution and as many units as we can at and below 50% AMI. We prioritize the at-risk properties for preservation. We prioritize family-size units, larger units where we can both produce and preserve them. And we consistently look for mixed income for maintaining diversity in our communities. Everything we do is on a conversation starting whenever you have some details you want to talk to us. It's a rolling process. It's not a round. We don't have a cutoff. So if you have details, if you have a site, we need to be engaging in conversations so you can help get a better feeling for how this applies to the site, to the project you're talking about. We have an application process that we have in our guidelines, follows the Maryland application process, consistency. Many, but not all of our projects are going to go through the state for financing. And then we work with you, we underwrite everything you heard earlier that we need more from what we have. Underwriting is to work with you on how to leverage our money to the greatest extent possible. So these are conversations that are ongoing. It's hard to figure out what we mean. We highlighted our FY22 for the number of units we got, how much we put in per unit, wide distribution. We're going to have highlights of a couple of case studies just so that you get a feeling for those specific transactions and how those are representative of our approach. And at this point, we're going to start with Rob Goldman from MHP, talk about a very recent preservation transaction that we're very proud of working with our partners.
Thanks. Good morning, everyone. I want to talk about an exciting project, Earl Manor. And first of all, I want to recognize Artie Harris, my VP of Real Estate Development, who worked diligently on this project. Earl Manor is a really important project. As sort of Mark recognized, this is a NOAA deal. It's in a hot market. Wheaton has experienced a lot of redevelopment, a lot of luxury buildings going up. This property is 140 units, 5.4 acres on Georgia Avenue. It's walking distance to the Wheaton Mall. There's grocery store, mass transit. The Wheaton Metro site is right there. And it's a site that has potential for redevelopment. I'd say almost all the units are affordable to folks less than 80% of area median, and about half, a little over half, are affordable to folks under 60% of area median income. So this was something where, as Mark had those projections, we're going to lose those NOAA deals if we don't act and try to preserve it. So we were very engaged in trying to find a way to preserve this property and make sure it didn't get lost. I mean, it definitely would have been, rents could have been, with the new owner, could have been increased and redeveloped the site. So we were in discussions. We entered into a JV agreement with Washington Housing Conservancy, which is a nonprofit organization developed through the work that JBG Smith was doing around developing affordable housing. So we joined a partnership with them, and it's been a very positive relationship. So we, this was the first project. The new pilot legislation that Frank just talked about passed, I believe, in November, December of 21, but it didn't go in effect until March 2022. And I think we came to realize pretty quickly that not only, one of the things, and I do want to recognize, Montgomery Housing Alliance, which I'm part of, and many of you, some of you in the audience are part of. We're fighting for this legislation, and obviously some of this related to the way pilots were being done, but also recognizing that with prices going up, the old model of sort of X number of dollars per unit just wasn't going to work to get you, a full pilot, especially if you weren't doing 100% affordable. So getting this new legislation was critical, and really want to also recognize the council and the county executive for sort of coming together, finding a way to, find some compromise to get this legislation passed, because it was critical in our ability to get this legislation. And as I think we recognized during our debate about it, without it, we would have needed a lot more money from the county to kind of just deal with the taxes. And so this is what allowed us, we did get funding, gap funding from the county, but it was a lot less. And therefore, there's more money in the HIF to do other projects. And so this was very important to have the pilot. Also, obviously the dynamics we were facing, like we were watching the Fed, the interest rates, as we're trying to wait for the pilot, but then actions were going on. So it was a very dynamic period. We're still, obviously, this is only getting worse. The structure, next, I don't know what slide you're on. Next slide, I guess. Oh, next one. You don't have another one? Okay, so our financing, we use Freddie Mac as a first debt. We used a mezzanine debt, the JBG impact pool, and I see the guys from JBG Smith here, and want to really thank them and recognize them that they have created, as part of that sort of dynamic of really thinking about affordable housing, came up and using their expertise in finance, were able to pull together a pool of mezzanine financing that really helps to develop, helps to acquire affordable housing, helps to preserve affordable housing. Then we also had county subordinate debt, and again, I appreciate all, Asim and Frank and his whole team. This was, on these deals, you got to act fast, you got to get through it. There's a lot of iterations and a lot of things to work through. It's not easy, and they were great to work with, and appreciate all their commitment to making it all happen. As I said, we had a JV. In addition, we had to put up, the JV team had to put up their equity, and then we had the county pilot. I will say also that, I want to also recognize Vicki Gall. We had, being the first, there's always things you don't think about when you're doing a deal, or when you're doing legislation, and it's not till you get the real deal that you really think through, what does it all mean? And then you're looking at the legislation and saying, well, what does it exactly say? And there's ambiguities and other things. So there's a lot to work through, being the first, but I think we were able to get there, and so made it happen, and very appreciative to everyone for just, after all that, putting more money into these funds to make more deals happen. So thank you.
Good morning. I'm Sarah Constant with Mission First, and we were part of the production of housing in Montgomery County. We worked with St. Anne's Episcopal Church to create St. Anne's Senior Housing, 76 units of new construction senior housing in Damascus, Maryland, with affordable to folks from 30 to 70% of area median income. We did use income averaging to get this project done. The project was done in partnership with the church. It took a while, 8 years, and I say that faith-based developments can take a little bit of time. And we had 2 bishops, 3 rectors, 2 vestries in the course of that 8 years. But, and one of the things that we really learned is that there's a approval process for doing the development, and then when it goes to, transferring the land, there's another approval process with the diocese. So we had a fun time getting through all of those approvals, but we did successfully navigate that. St. Anne's Episcopal Church had a large slot of land behind them. Some of it was parking, some of it was just excess land. And we subdivided the lot, went through a lengthy conditional use approval process under the county zoning requirements. And we subdivided the property to create the senior housing lot and new building on top of the church parking lot. We're also expanding church parking as part of this project as well. Like Rob mentioned, we closed in April, and we watched the interest rates every day. It was the first thing we did as we went through the closing process, 75 basis points from when we thought we were going to close to when we closed. We were very blessed, and I want to echo Rob's sentiments on the new pilot, because that really saved us and enabled us to get this project closed in that time, and we're grateful for the county for their support to make that happen. We were a 4% tax-exempt bond project with financing from the state. We had a $13.5 million tax-exempt loan from CDA. At the point we're using Freddie Mac financing, we probably would look at alternatives now. We just tended to go where we thought the best interest rates were going to be at the time and the best execution. And we have state rental housing works. But it was really the contributions of the county in terms of the home funds that we received and the pilot that enabled us to get this project closed. We also had our own capital magnet funds that we were able to create a sponsor loan into the project. And I want to note that NHT was really a key partner to us, because 8 years is a long time, and I think they had pre-development financing into this project for 5 or 6 years in this, and that really helped carry us, and they increased their loan, and that was a really critical piece for us, because it takes a lot of dollars to get these projects to the closing table. So our total development cost was $27.4 million, and our construction costs were $17 million. So we are, really excited to have broken ground in April and look forward to moving folks in next summer. Thank you.
Yes, okay. Ronnie Warner is going to give you an update on this process.
Good morning. I'm Ronnie Warner. I'm the Chief of the Office of Planning and Development in the Department of General Services. As many of you are aware, the county proffered 18 sites for affordable housing. We received an overwhelming response to those sites, over 130 letters of intent. So both staff at the Department of General Services and the Department of Transportation are coming up with a strategy on how to move forward. So we're hoping that we will have something posted to the website in the next several weeks. So we ask that you continue to check the website. We most likely will move forward with several of those sites with a more formal request for developer proposals. And we will keep that the website updated, and we look forward to getting more response from the development community.
Thank you, Ronnie.
You're welcome. Do you have a question on that?
On the county sites?
It was a general question about the developers. So I see you mentioned that a lot of the developers have been from out of the state. So is there a system to allow local developers to have like a point system, since we already know the communities that we'll be working with?
Well, we don't use a point system per se, Our monies are available for any developer. We follow one, process. Yes, we have been working with, a number of you over the last several years. But then, of course, new developers are coming, which we encourage. We want, if we have to go and solve for this, issue of affordable housing, as you saw in our numbers or in the county executive numbers, we need as many developers as we can. So we encourage more developers. We don't have a point system that if you're a local developer, you have preference of 2 points or 3 points. That's not how we score. We have gone through our criteria. Our criteria is mentioned on our website in our application process. And the one thing I would say, if you have not visited our website, DSC's website or DGS or MC DOT for the county-owned site or PLD lots, please visit. There's a lot of information that's available. So even if you did not put your letter of interest, no issues there, because ultimately the county will come up with a process. You will have another chance to put your proposal in. So this was not an RFP process. This was simply getting the letter of interest in. So we know that we have received 130. So as you heard from the county executive, yes, these are only 18 sites. Some are big, some are small. At the most you may get a couple of thousand, affordable units. But whatever we can, we are leveraging the county assets over here. So we are doing the best we can in terms of leveraging county, assets or county dollars. So anything that you can bring to the table, is highly welcome. So this concludes our forum this morning. We'll be around for a little while, so if you want to mingle with us, we really thank you for coming out here and meeting with us. This has been a very important, meeting, at least for me, to connect with the developer community again. 2 years went by, we were doing everything, through Zoom. It's good to meet with people, in person. So, and if you go and find some other questions, please shoot an email to us. You have our contact information. We are here to help you. If you have, and I've done this in my prior life, if you have simply a concept and you want to talk to us, we can keep things confidential. Unless you file an application, becomes public information, you can come and talk to us just by, if you have an idea which may be just out there. If you just want to come and bounce off some ideas, we are available for in-person meetings. If you want to, through Teams or Zoom, we can do it that way as well. So whatever suits you, but we are here to help you. And it goes from our end too. If we have anything that we can bounce off you, we'll certainly call upon you to get your expertise, because you are right there at ground zero doing stuff. We can come with policies or programs, but we don't do housing. We're not going and building stuff. It's you all as our partners who are doing it. So thank you very much for coming out here.